Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Are you ready?
Hello everybody, it's Jeff. A better day where you are than I am here in Maine. Getting rain all day. So, yeah. Anyway, I got a couple of videos here I wanted to put up here for you to look at. This first one comes from the IHIP girls, and they're talking about Trump's disaster bill that's going to strip women of their voting rights. And I think I might have talked about this in a previous video here, but there's more to it now. And so let's go to that video here, and we'll discuss that on the other side.
Well, the U.S. economy is crashing and Donald Trump is saving shower heads. We have the House Republicans passing the most unconstitutional, comprehensive voter suppression legislation that I have seen in my lifetime. Here it is. They call it the SAVE Act of all things. And Mark Elias is a voting expert, and he is going to explain to us exactly what the SAVE Act does.
A telling sign of the age in which we live that House Republicans, in the middle of a financial crisis, when Donald Trump is ruining our alliances around the world, when Elon Musk and Doge are trashing our federal government, when prices are rising, the thing that the House Republicans spend time on is to try to disenfranchise millions of voters. So the SAVE Act is aimed at disenfranchising all manner of people, young voters, transient voters, married women. All eyes have been on the Republicans in Congress to see whether they try to advance this bill, even in light of all of the unpopular measures they have now been stuck carrying for Donald Trump. There was some thought maybe because Donald Trump put forward his own anti-voting executive order, that was to take the heat off of House Republicans from having to carry this this bill forward. But
Okay,
oh
let's stop
no,
it there.
no.
What the SAVE Act does is it requires you to present a birth certificate to vote. Married women, I think the statistic was 8 out of 10 married women have their married name on their driver's license. It is not the same as their birth certificate. So that means unless they have a passport, they will be unable to vote. Also, statistically, only 1/3 of Americans have a passport. All of these other people will not be allowed to vote because Republicans know the only way they win elections is to suppress voters. It's unbelievable that this is happening in 2025.
I'll tell you, this is why they win elections. Because do you see how they're taking their agenda? Everything that they campaigned on, we're 80 days into this and they're already cramming this stuff through. The Democrats don't operate like this, and we could, and we should, and we don't. And the reason that we don't is the reason that we have Trump, because we always do the politics of assumption. We assume the Republicans wouldn't do that. That's so crazy. We assume that nobody's going to vote for Donald Trump the third time. That seems insane. And if the Democrats, when they get the trifecta of power, like MAGA Republicans have now, they should have, when Biden won, they should have fixed the Supreme Court. Donald Trump should have been in prison. They should have done so many different things. But instead, they quietly govern. Biden put out a lot of good things, but look at the difference. Look at the two different games we're playing here. It doesn't surprise me one bit that they're doing this. Voters have always been a problem for them. It surprises me 0% that they're attacking women. Women have always been a problem for them. And one of the biggest things that they attack, both in law and in civil rights. But this right here tells me when they get in, they're maniacal about their agenda. And it doesn't surprise me because they've always run on this type of stuff. But the speed at which they enact their agenda, I wish the Democrats had the balls to do that shit. I really do.
I completely agree. One thing that they also did in Congress yesterday was passed forward the new cuts to Medicare and Social Security. Now let's look at this. $880 billion in cuts to Medicaid, $230 billion cuts to food assistance, 14 plus trillion in new debt, all to fund a $7 trillion in tax cuts for the ultra wealthy. This is unconscionable. People should be furious. We've got DOGE cutting programs. All of this, cutting the Board of Education, all of this is so billionaires, oligarchs and corporations can have more money so they don't have to pay taxes. None of these things would be an issue if we taxed the rich, but we don't want to do that because we've got MAGA in control, and Donald Trump is the author of more oligarchy than ever seen in this country. It is disgusting, and people are going to suffer.
Well, you know, where we live, white people have always used the excuse for decades, and they give themselves a permission structure. They say, I'm fiscally conservative, but I'm socially liberal. And that's a way when they're in more sophisticated circles that they can cover for their racist, cruel default setting. And to all of the fiscal conservative Republicans that have for decades tried to, when you're out at parties, be kind to Black people socially because it makes you feel like, oh, maybe I'm not a racist. Maybe my voting record is one thing, but look I was just really nice to this Black person. Oh my God, here's a gay person. I'm going to be super nice to them. This is the most evil statement because I have heard it my entire life, long before MAGA. Fiscally conservative. If you're so fiscally conservative, you'd quit voting for Republicans because they add more national debt to the debt total than Democrats could ever dream of. Furthermore, they break the economy so much and deregulate it that then taxpayers have to pay for a bailout because of your inability to acknowledge that maybe we need to have guardrails. And so then taxpayers further bail them out. And now we're going to give them further tax breaks. And it just goes and goes and goes. And you can feed the rich and you can feed the rich and you can feed the white rich people all you want to. It will never be enough because they think they're better. And I know this, and she knows this because we know these people, and they are in their hearts and minds. When you hook them up to truth serum and a polygraph, they're racist and they think white people are better, and more white people need to speak out about it because this is insane. It is welfare for the rich.
Well, and no bigger parasite than Elon Musk. So moving on to something that I do not think is getting enough coverage is this measles outbreak we have in the United States. And we've got Robert F. Kennedy, who's just a complete dipshit. But he said something yesterday at the cabinet meeting that I found alarming, and it was about autism. So let's hear what he has to say yesterday in the cabinet meeting.
We are going at your direction. We are going to know by September. We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
So big. Think of that.
Okay, that's a lie. We all know that's not going to happen. But we also all know, because Trump's response was, oh, it's the shots. They're trying to prove that autism is caused by vaccines. The measles MMR is what they're saying. That has been disproven. Expertise has been lost. And then he doesn't quite come out and say it there, but on Fox News, this is what he has to say.
thought
cost.
that, I'm sorry, there was a thought that vaccines might be related to this. Then they did several studies that said that there was no connection between vaccines and autism. So what are you seeing in this data that you're looking at, or is it all going to be brand new?
The studies that they did were very, very narrow, and there were about 17 studies. The Institute of Medicine, which is part of the National Academy of Sciences, says that 14 of those studies are invalid. And the biggest weakness in those studies is they never studied vaccinated versus unvaccinated group, which is the only way that you can really make this determination.
Okay, I want to remind everybody, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not a scientist. He is an attorney. I am an attorney. I should not be giving you advice about vaccines. But then the department that he took over, he has been a conspiracy theorist about vaccines. Again, that's why you've got all these measles outbreaks, because people don't want vaccines. Now we have this, and this is a HHS scientist who says it has become clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies. Dr. Peter Marks wrote in a resignation letter referring to Health and Human Safety Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This is a scientist that says he is going to bring in quack scientists that are going to give you quack reports, and then people are going to suffer to entertain his wild conspiracy theories. And it's alarming. Thank goodness my kids are past this, but people are going to continue to be led by false scientists, and children and people of all ages are going to be adversely impacted. And some, as we've already seen from measles, are going to die. It is unconscionable that this is happening.
First thing I want to say is I read that there are more people in the United States with measles than there are trans athletes. So that's an interesting tidbit. But secondly, this is what Republicans do. They promote junk scientists. And this is what the oil companies have been doing for years regarding climate change, even though there is evidence, objective evidence, that the oil and gas industry has known since the 70s that the CO2 was causing warming to the planet. They cover it up. This is what happened with the opioid epidemic. You have the Sackler family that hired junk scientists and said that Oxycontin and opioids were not addictive and were able to cram it through the FDA. And you have millions of Americans that have died from this because the fight on science is all a part of this authoritarian idea. And it started before Trump, when you, as a society, you value money and individualism over the good of the collective. You're not going to have a sustainable place that's safe and regulated for people to live. And sadly, in America, Americans cherry pick when it's beneficial to them to believe something. Mm-hmm. And when it's not beneficial to them, they reject it. And this has been ingrained into us. And now it's manifested itself in our government. And now we have the worst impulses that this country has bred and enforced, all in power with no guardrails.
Well, and led by the biggest dipshit, Donald Trump, and it just trickles down, the most incompetent clown car of cabinet. It's disturbing. It's concerning. Educate yourself about everything, because there is not going to be much help for you in the world of the government. Please stick with us. We're trying to get to 1 million subscribers.
So, yeah, I mean, the only way the women are going to be able to get around this is by getting a passport. Okay, I have a passport because once in a while, I like to go into Canada or something. But I would recommend everybody get one because with that passport, you have to have a birth certificate in order to get one, right? So it's either that or go digging through your papers to find your birth certificate. But I think that, if you have to go through all of that, then clearly this is just an attempt to lessen the number of women voting. And I agree with the girls here. by saying that, women have always been sort of a thorn in Republican side, because a lot of the things that Republicans support, as far as policies, social policies or whatever, affect women the most, okay? And so by getting rid of them, there'd be fewer Democrats, because, there's more Democrats amongst women than there are men. So there would be a huge blow to the women in this country if they are denied access to the voting booth because, on your driver's license that you have this last name, but on your birth certificate you have this. You know what I'm saying? So if you can get a passport, there's no way they can fight that. I think it's really a rotten way to, knock people off the voter rolls, simply because a woman got married and took the name of their partner. Okay, it's like, well, something that's they're really digging in the bottom of the barrel to find reasons not to have people vote. Okay, when they have to resort to steps like this, okay, they're running out of ideas. Okay, and frankly, if it's challenged in court, I don't see how that could stand up. Okay, but in the meantime, they enact something like this, and by the time it's fought out in the courts and a decision is made, an election has already come and gone, the results have been accepted, and you know what I'm saying? It's all about delay. Okay, and then the next time we'll figure out another way to knock people off the vote. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's these silly games. Okay, and it ought to be considered cheating. It really should be. I mean, just because they're doing it before the election doesn't mean it's still not cheating. If they're trying to knock people off the voter rolls, then it's the same as denying people or not counting thousands of votes that come in from overseas from military personnel and say, we can't, we're discarding that. Same thing, cheating. Okay, for whatever fucking reason lawyers come up with, okay, it's still cheating, as we all know it is. It's like, because you brought a sleeve full of aces to a card game, okay, and you were playing and using them well, you can't say, I wasn't cheating, because I already had the cards when I got here. Okay, it's the same kind of reasoning that these Republicans are using here. All right, and because they have so many people in that party who are of the mind that Democrats are allowing illegals to vote in our elections is ludicrous. Okay, that just isn't happening. You go to Mexico, grab somebody from Mexico, bring them to an election, and see if they can get in there and vote. I'm telling you, you can't do it. You just can't do it. We already have laws in place to prevent that sort of thing. There's never been a person who was illegal in this country who was ever able to get in and vote. Because what's the first thing you have to do when you go vote? There's people, right, sitting at a table or somewhere, and they ask, what's your name? And then they go down this list of names to see if your name is there. Okay, that list is a list, because you've registered and you are allowed to vote because you had to bring in paperwork to prove you're a citizen and all that, right? Your name wouldn't be there. If you were, Mr. X from Mexico who just came here illegally, your name wouldn't be on that list. How the fuck do they get to vote if there's name? You don't get a ballot. If the name isn't there, you're not getting a ballot. There's no way illegal people are voting. And I challenge anybody out there to find me somebody who voted in an election, who was illegal, and had that vote accepted. Okay, that's my homework to you Republicans, MAGA. Prove to me that illegal people have voted in elections and they were given a ballot. Okay, show me that. And like I said, things like that, they use to scare people into thinking that, everything's being tampered. When it is them all along that's tampering when they pass things like this or when they create policies like this to prevent women from voting. Who's the one cheating? It's not illegals. It's Republicans. They know that their policies are not popular, that they don't sell, that people don't support what they believe in. Okay, and they are losing. If they don't cheat, they'll lose every fucking time. Why do you think they redistrict all over the fucking place? All right? Why do you think they do these things? It has nothing to do about illegal people voting in our elections. It's all about Republicans doing anything they can to win. And, you know, I keep saying this. The only way that we counter that is by Democrats, all Democrats, coming out en masse in every fucking election, because Republicans, cheating or not cheating, they can't win. All right? If every fucking Republican came out and voted, if every Democrat, if every fucking Democrat came out and voted in an election, it doesn't matter how much they cheat. They still won't have enough votes to beat the Democrats, because there are way more Democrats in the United States than there are Republicans, always has been. All right? And there's no way Republicans can get away with cheating if every Democrat votes. And in this last election, they didn't. Not every Democrat did, and and when Democrats don't vote, that's when Republicans win. Okay? You know, I really hate to have to repeat myself a lot of times, but I think I have to, because for some of you people out there, you ain't registering this. Okay? You think that, oh, I'm going to protest by not voting. That's the same as handing your vote over to the other side. Okay? One less vote for the Democrats is one more vote added to the Republican side. That's what it is. And so if you don't vote, you might as well just say, okay, I voted for Trump. If you don't vote, you voted for Trump. You just didn't physically go there and mark it, but you gave that son of a bitch your fucking vote. And so I just, you know, if people could just do what I say, there'd be so much less misery in this country. Really, there would be. I mean, you know, you think about all the elections that we've had in the last 30, 40 years in this country, and if we had big voter turnout from the Democrats, that it would be such a different place. It'd be much less fucking crap going on. The economy would be doing much better. You know, we'd be a major fucking force in the world today. Okay? Instead, we let the other side gain the upper hand because we've got too lazy to do anything. And now here we are bitching and moaning about, oh my God. It's like, well, even if you didn't vote for Trump, you still allowed this to happen. Okay? And that's not excusable any more than if you did vote for Trump. You fucking knew what was at stake, and you went ahead and sat home and did nothing. And now you got this guy in there, and he's going to make it twice as hard now for Democrats to get out and vote, because now he's attacking the women. Okay? He's going to make it harder for women to get their vote, you know, to register to vote. Okay? And that's just another way of knocking people off the fucking ballots. This is how they win, by denying people the ability to vote. The fewer people that do, the better chance they have at winning. That's their math. That's what they've learned, because they know they can't win on a toe-to-toe basis here. Democrat versus Republican, they'd lose every time. Every fucking time they'd lose. Okay? But if the Democrats stay home and not vote, they win all the fucking time. That's how Trump won this time. That's why he lost the last time, because all the Democrats got out and voted. Well, at least not all of them, but a great many did, more than was ever recorded in my lifetime. So there was a lot of Democrats that actually got off their ass and voted, and Biden won by a fucking landslide. Again. And that pissed off Trump, you know, because he never expected that he would lose like that. But you see, that's what you got to do. You have to maintain that momentum. And for whatever reason why you may not like a Democrat president or something like that, okay, wouldn't such a president be much better than the one we have now? Okay, think about that. In less than 100 days, that son of a bitch has done more scandals in this country than every fucking president we've had in the last 50, 60 years. In just less than 100 days. Okay? If you don't believe me, there's a list online. All the things Trump has done in the last 100 days. Look it up. You're going to see all kinds of the shit that he did in there. And if you think any of that stuff is positive, then, you know, you're part of the reason why this country's suffering right now. But I'm telling you right now, you're gonna be in awe, because not everything he's done has been reported by the press. All right, not everything. So there's a big, long fucking list of things that what his executive orders he's implemented, and it's come to fruition, a lot of these things. And if you want to dig even deeper into that, take that list and then compare it to the manifesto, the Project 2025 manifesto, and connect the dots. You're going to find that everything that he's done is right there in that fucking thing that I told you all to read before you vote. Okay? Everything. And so, here we are. Here we are. And what are we going to learn from this? Okay? What are we going to learn from this? Get out and fucking vote. I don't care if the person, the Democrat, is a woman or a black or whoever, whatever reason you got in your head not to vote, okay? Fuck that. You have to be as stubborn as the Republicans are when they vote, because, hey, for them, it's okay if their guy is a rapist, a 36-time convicted felon, okay, and hangs around with a goddamn child molester or whatever, and instigated a goddamn riot against his own. Hey, none of that shit matters. Okay? So why can't the Democrats be like that? Okay? If they're going to be totally loyal to the R's, then the Democrats have to be totally loyal to the D's. Okay? That means never let the Republicans win. And the only way you can do that is if you get out every goddamn election and you vote like your fucking life depended on it, because it does. It does. There's no excuse in it. I mean, look, in the military, when people are given an order to do something, you fucking do it. Whether you agree with it or not. Just because you're a civilian, you still have a civic duty. You know that. You still have a civic duty. Just the same thing as you can't be driving around out on the streets without a fucking driver's license. You damn well better get out there and vote. That's also your fucking duty. Okay? None of us can pretend that, well, I'm not going to do it, I'm an American. That's not the excuse. Okay? That excuse ain't going to fly. Because you are an American, you are supposed to do that. You are supposed to follow these things and do your civic duty. Okay? That is your fucking responsibility. I'm sorry if that wasn't pounded into your head when you went to school, but it should have been. Instead, I think a lot of you people, the only thing that got pounded into your fucking heads when you were growing up was, you know, TV and video games and toys and, you know, and whatnot, okay? But the reality is you guys should have been learning about what it means to be an American and what you're supposed to do as an American, all right? So whoever your civics teacher was did a very piss-poor job, okay? I had pretty good civics teachers, and they taught me a lot, okay, about what it is to be an American citizen, okay? It's not just walking around with, oh, I'm an American, okay? It's not just walking around with a flag, you know, or, you know, having money to buy things that's got the president's face on it, okay? It's way more than that, you know, and we have a government in place that works for us. I know some of you people don't understand that because for most of your lifetimes you saw a government working for itself. But that's not the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to work for us. And because we haven't been pulling their fucking nose hairs to get them, to remind them that, hey, you're supposed to be here for me, not for you. Okay? Screw your stupid ideas that you came in here with. My ideas take precedence over yours. And because we never did that, we never held these people to account, they've been able to do all kinds of shit there behind our backs, and we just sat back and let it happen. You know? We let the people who have an agenda that is un-American take over a great much of this country. And it doesn't look very American much anymore now, does it? I mean, that's what they wanted to do all along. That was their goal. And they ain't done yet. They're not done yet. Not until they've beaten the system down to where it's completely powerless. They pretty much damn near have done that right now, okay? I mean, they've taken away our democracy, and to the point where, you know, our elections, who knows if they're going to matter now. If he's not going to listen to the courts, why would he care about how an election result comes in? Do you think he's going to leave? Okay? Think about that. His arrogance has already shown us how far he's willing to take this. Denying people votes, you know, tampering with elections, and every time he's run for office, okay? This is a guy who doesn't play by the rules. So if we have an election, a presidential election, and he had a hard time accepting losing that one time there, do you think he's going to repeat that again? You know, I don't. And so, like I said, if he's not going to listen to the courts at this point, and he's already got people he appointed into certain, you know, judges appointed into certain courts, okay, if he's not going to listen to the courts, then what the hell is an election going to mean to this guy if he loses? Is he going to vacate the White House? Well, you know, or is he going to just simply fight that fucking turnout and maintain the office and not vacate it, no matter what the Supreme Court says? If they decide to grow a moral spine or an ethical spine, do you think they're, you know, he's going to listen to them if they say you have to leave? Who's going to force him? You know, like I said, you guys, you really don't know, you know, who you voted for. You think you did. I mean, a lot of you people thought you knew Trump and knew him well. But boy, a lot of you are finding out you didn't know him at all. Okay, so what do you imagine Trump is going to do in the next presidential election, or hell, even in the midterms? You think he's going to accept when the Republicans start losing seats all over the country here? You know, think about that. There's a lot to think about. You know, and then at the end, decide what am I going to what can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen? Aside from the fact that, hey, you know, voting, but are you going to do something else? Are you going to try and do something? You know, if you're really tired of all this, what he's doing, and you're probably going to be tired if you're not already by this summer. If you're not by then, okay, or if you are by then, you're going to start wondering, what can I do? I know there's a lot of veterans right now having that conversation with a lot of people. You know, where I go to the clinic and stuff, and I sit there with all the veterans, and I'm telling you, the number one topic of conversation is fucking Trump, and a lot of them, they're not happy. Okay, some of them have already been have had well, what can I say? Been affected by what Trump has done already. Some of them have, and so there's a lot of anger there. All right, so let's go to a commercial break. We'll be right back.
I'm Alex Curtis. I'm a lobsterman in Maine, and this is me.
I'm Roxy Sugar, and this is me.
I'm Eric Hopkins. I'm an artist, and this is me.
This is me.
Me.
This is me.
This is me.
At the end of the journey, the main thing is you, original.
The markets again opened with major losses.
I'm very concerned.
A lot of anxiety among Americans worried about their retirement.
I'm very concerned.
A majority of CEOs expect a recession.
I'm very concerned.
A concerned senator takes action. Susan Collins and Congress have the power to control Donald Trump's tariffs. Senator Collins, stop just being concerned and show some courage. Call Senator Collins today to demand a vote. 202-224-2523. Paid for by No Surrender Fund.
Did you know that baking soda and ice-cold water is the crucial secret to reach firmness? Just go to the kitchen and do this before going to bed.
I never stopped to think about that.
Exactly. It's simple if you think about it. There's no miracle. The only thing that makes a man firm is increasing blood flow to that area.
That's what the famous blue pills do, right?
Yes, but they do it by dilating the veins. That's why they don't solve the problem permanently. There's only one way to permanently fix this problem without relying on pills, prescriptions, pumps, or exercises, and that's by clearing out the veins that are clogged with plaques. That's why the Indian doctor is getting so popular in the media. He discovered an Indian bull trick that can clear out more than 93% of the plaques. This brings 20 times more blood flow to the area for men. That's why this trick is so effective. A top research team at Johns Hopkins University investigated and confirmed that this trick works for any man, regardless of age. There are already over 62,000 men in America alone who have permanently reversed the problem.
When I saw that I could get firm again without taking any pills, I couldn't believe it. It had been years since I was able to perform.
For over 6 years, I couldn't stay firm. My marriage was terrible, and my wife left me, and we got divorced. That's when I found the Indian bull trick recipe, and I still can't believe I'm firmer than when I was 18. Now I'm dating a woman 20 years younger than me, and she's very satisfied with my performance.
That's incredible. I told you it's something innovative, and it's been proven to work for any man. I'll leave the link to the free class here for anyone who wants to see it. So, click the button below and watch the free video with the full recipe.
But why isn't anyone talking about this in the media?
This trick was recently discovered, and since it was found, blue pill sales have dropped by over 60% in India. The industry is very worried that this natural trick will become popular in America. That's why they're doing everything they can to keep it from being publicized. This free class has already been taken down twice, and it's close to being taken down for the third time. And this time, it looks like it will be permanent. So this could be the last chance for those who need to see this information. Click the button below and watch the free class with the complete step-by-step guide.
When American troops perish in the line of duty, the remains are treated with the greatest honor and quiet dignity. They are placed aboard special Air Force transport planes and returned to their home soil and into the grieving arms of their loved ones. 4 U.S. service members defending our interests and alliances in Europe perished last week. Every president has accepted the responsibility to greet our fallen heroes. It doesn't matter the party. Where is their president today? Golfing. Again. So as the families of these 4 lost heroes contemplate life without their husbands, brothers, fathers, or sons, Donald Trump is showing them the respect he thinks they deserve by golfing. Again.
Holy fuck.
Were you just checking out her ass?
No, I wasn't.
You know what? Fuck you.
Wait, babe, calm down. Oh my god. Mary! I am sorry!
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And and some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it. Write for Pollution Booklet, Box 1771, Radio City Station, New York.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it.
It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
A big bag, right, for what, $15, then they should just sell the smaller bags, because people can buy more of those, because because that's less money they got to fork over at one time, Okay, welcome back. Oh, Jesus. All right. Okay, this second video here I have comes from Rebel headquarters. Rebel HQ. And this is about this fucking fascist move that was made by Trump's DOJ here concerning Mel Gibson and his attempt to buy a gun. So let's go to that video here, and we'll talk about that on the other side.
Part of the story is the lengths to which the leadership of the department has gone to prevent me from testifying here today. On Friday night, around 9:15, I learned that the Deputy Attorney General's office had directed the Department's Security and Emergency Planning Service to send 2 armed Special Deputy U.S. Marshals to my home to serve me with a letter. The letter was to be served at my home between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock on Friday night. I was in the car with my husband and my parents, who are sitting behind me today, when I got the news that the officers were on their way to my house, where my teenage child was home alone. Fortunately, due to the grace of a very decent person who understood how upsetting this would be to my family, I was able to confirm receipt of the letter to an email address, and the deputies were called off. At no point did Mr. Blanche's staff pick up the phone and call me before they sent armed deputies to my home.
For anyone still confused about what fascism looks like, meet former pardon attorney Liz Oyer. She testified in front of congressional Democrats, only because Republicans refused to show up so that they wouldn't upset Trump's Justice Department, as she exposed their intimidation tactics.
The letter was a warning to me about the risks of testifying here today. But I am here because I will not be bullied into concealing the ongoing corruption and abuse of power at the Department of Justice. DOJ is entrusted with keeping us safe, upholding the rule of law, and protecting our civil rights. It is not a personal favor bank for the president. Its career employees are not the president's personal debt collectors. I see only Democratic members here today, but this is not a partisan issue. It should alarm all Americans that the leadership of the Department of Justice appears to value political loyalty above the fair and responsible administration of justice. It should offend all Americans that our leaders are treating public servants with a lack of basic decency and humanity.
Now, I don't know how many Americans realize that Trump's Department of Justice isn't only led by Trump loyalists and recipient of a $25,000 donation from him while she was hearing complaints about his fraudulent Trump University, Pam Bondi, but also chocked full of his personal attorneys, like Todd Blanche, who became a regular scowling statue behind the president every time he left court to complain about breaking the law 1 million times.
Our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess.
That guy fired Liz Oyer in March over her refusal as a pardon attorney to recommend restoring Mel Gibson's gun rights the way that Trump wanted, after he pleaded no contest to a domestic violence battery charge involving his girlfriend. She was fired for that.
I was asked to write a memo to the Attorney General recommending that these 9 individuals get this relief that she was interested in granting to some deserving Americans. And when the memo came back to me, the comment was, please add Mel Gibson to this recommendation.
Who asked you to add Mel Gibson?
An official in the office of the Deputy Attorney General who is running this project on the day-to-day instructed me that Mel Gibson should be added to the memo. And I responded that I was unable to fulfill the request because I did not have enough information about Mr. Gibson to be able to recommend that, given his history of domestic violence, he should receive his gun rights back. That's something that is a public safety question. It's very dangerous to mix people with history of domestic abuse and firearms. That substantially increases the likelihood of catastrophic outcomes in domestic violence situations, and that was just not a recommendation that I could make lightly.
So Oyer didn't follow orders that clearly show if she did, it vastly increases the chance domestic violence abusers, like Mel Gibson, would easily escalate it to more fatal situations.
More than half of the women killed by gun violence are killed by family members or intimate partners. Jelena's death was one of at least 67 gun incidents related to domestic violence that occurred last week.
Not only that, but obvious studies show that more than half of all intimate partner homicides are committed by dating partners. Research shows that when states broaden their firearm prohibition laws beyond federal law to cover abusive dating partners, the states experience a 16% reduction in intimate partner gun homicides. And it goes on to point out that states that require that people subject to domestic violence-related protective orders to provide proof that they actually relinquished their firearms are linked to a 16% reduction in intimate partner gun homicides. So in other words, Liz Oyer's decision to not restore Mel Gibson's guns was made to potentially save someone's life that he could crash out on again. But in Trump's DOJ, if you defy their ignorant orders based on loyalty and friendships, you get fired quickly.
It all unfolded very quickly. I was asked to add him to my recommendation on Thursday evening, and I did not sleep at all Thursday night because I understood that the consequence of not fulfilling this request was likely that I would no longer even be in these conversations. Dissent within the Department of Justice is just being aggressively silenced. People are afraid to speak up. They're afraid to object. I confided in a colleague who expressed the view that yes is really the only acceptable answer to requests that are being made by department leadership. And so I understood that the consequences were potentially serious for my career at the Department of Justice. And when I came into work on Friday morning, I said to a colleague, I really think that Mel Gibson might be my downfall. And within hours of saying that, I was being escorted out of my office.
And you got this letter with Todd Blanche's signature on it saying that you were being terminated.
Yeah, I've never met Mr. Blanche, but I received that letter with his signature saying I was being terminated.
So in response to her decision to testify about the administration's treatment of the Justice Department and law firms who act in cases that are disliked by Trump, they sent armed marshals to her house to give her that warning letter. Should you choose to appear before Congress, the department expects that you will abide by your obligations under the law, department policy, and the applicable rules of professional responsibility. Those matters include the deliberative processes that underlie pardons, clemency, the restoration of firearm rights, and related decisions. Her lawyer, Michael Bromwich, in his letter to Blanche, said the claim that Oyer's testimony is barred by executive privilege is baseless, and that she's entitled to certain legal protections for whistleblowers. This highly unusual step of directing armed law enforcement officers to the home of a former Department of Justice employee who has engaged in no misconduct, let alone criminal conduct, simply to deliver a letter is both unprecedented and completely inappropriate, is what Bromwich wrote back. In the letter to Oyer, Associate Deputy Attorney General Kendra Wharton said the department has significant confidentiality interests. She said these were particularly strong in Oyer's case because of the role Oyer played in making clemency recommendations for the president. referring to the executive privilege doctrine that shields some presidential communications from disclosure to Congress. They didn't want Liz Oyer to reveal the corrupt and mob-like behavior that has taken over the Department of Justice after only a couple of months under the control of Donald Trump. So they threatened her. One of those revelations that most people may not know about is the harmful results of Trump prioritizing the release of his January 6th foot soldiers, some of which have gone on to continue to break laws and wreak havoc in their local communities.
Happened to the pardon request for January 6 offenders had the normal DOJ pardon process been followed.
Had any of those individuals applied for a pardon, they would have been in due course fully vetted on an individualized basis, and the office would have formed a recommendation about the individual applicants, which would have been provided to the president. The whole role of the office is to ensure that some uniform and consistent standards are provided, and more importantly, the role is to ensure that people who are waiting their turn, who have meritorious cases, that those cases can make their way to the president's desk. Those folks who have access to the White House through the front door, they don't need the help of the Office of the Pardon Attorney to elevate their cause. And there are thousands of ordinary Americans who are seeking the mercy of the president through the clemency process who are not being considered right now because the office is not being consulted. There are individuals who are serving incredibly lengthy sentences under outdated mandatory minimum sentencing laws, and all of those people are on hold because no interaction was happening as of the time of my departure between the Office of the Pardon Attorney and the White House about clemency. The only people being considered for clemency were people who had some sort of inside access, inside track to the White House and could get their cases in front of the president without going through the ordinary process. And that is very concerning, and it causes real reason to lose confidence in the clemency process and real damage to our system of justice.
Yeah, it's pretty fucked up. I mean, you got a woman who's doing her fucking job as she's supposed to, okay? And because Gibson is, well, what do you want to call him, a friend? Maybe. Because he's one of the 3 ambassadors to Hollywood that Trump needed, I guess. I don't know why. Don't even ask me why the hell Trump needed ambassadors to Hollywood. Anyway, because Mel Gibson is friendly with Donald Trump, okay, he expects favors from Trump to help him, because he must have went crying to Trump and said, look, your DOJ is keeping me from getting my fucking gun. Okay, and that's because 15 years ago, was it 15 years? I think it was 15 years ago. Gibson got in trouble there with domestic violence with his fiance, girlfriend. I guess I don't even know if they were married, but he got violent with her because I guess he was drunk or something, and he beat on her. I guess he got charged and he no contest to it, and so he can't, it's on his record. So as long as it's on its record, he's not allowed to get a gun. I mean, if I think in every state, I think there's a law like that. And it took a long time for women to be able to get that law because so many women were being killed by, in gun crimes by people they know, usually family members. And so it was imperative that some kind of action was taken to prevent people who are known abusers or something, if you want to call it, to keep them from getting a weapon, a gun. And because Mel Gibson had that on his record, and for all these years he couldn't get one, now that he tried to go get one and he couldn't get it, all right, now he's mad, and he tried to get, get around it, and he got caught, I guess, and so he goes running to Trump. All right. And I think, this is ridiculous because, the right way to have done this on Mel Gibson's part was to try and convince the court that he had been rehabilitated. I mean, it's been 15 years, okay? That, convince them, I'm better now, I can control my temper, yada, 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 okay? Come up with some reasons why he can be trusted to have a gun again. But instead of doing it that way, he goes about it the other way by trying to just outright buy one, and he couldn't get it. And he, you know, so it's his own fault. And that in itself, I guess, shows that he still shouldn't be trusted to get one, because he obviously wouldn't be considered rehabilitated, okay? Because, you know, look what he's doing. And he's trying to use Trump to get around that because, hey, Trump made me an ambassador to Hollywood. Maybe he could help me with it. Okay? That's bullshit. That's like going to your godfather there, you know. I'm not talking about, you know, I'm talking about the mafia boss. Going to them and say, hey, you know, I gotta get something, you know. Do me a favor. Because this lawyer would not capitulate, you know, Trump goes after her. And I'm like, you know, do we have a president or do we have a mob boss, or is he a gangster? Okay? That's a pretty bad fucking thing for him to do. And in a fucking country that would respect laws, Trump, you know, would have been in deep, deep shit over that. Okay? And Gibson too. I mean, I think the two of them together they'd be looking at some problems. But as it stands, I mean, she takes the fall. I mean, but she's not going down quietly, which is good. I mean, she's letting people know what the hell happened here and just what kind of a man Trump is. I mean, it's not so much about how Mel Gibson was trying to get a gun. It's about how Trump tried to protect this guy who shouldn't have one and went after the person who was doing her job to enforce that, you know, that law. And, you know, he just, you know, like I said in the previous video, if this guy will not listen to the courts and will not do things in the traditional lawful way that we've done stuff in this country, then why the fuck would he care about an election of any kind? You know, he's already shown he's got disdain for the way this country does its affairs. I mean, he, instead of trying to fix it, he's trying to defund it in every which way he can. I mean, you can't close down departments without Congress's approval, because it was Congress that created them. It's gonna have to be Congress that closes them, like the Department of Education. You can't just shut it down. All right, and so he's trying to do the next best thing, and that's just take away all their funding. You know, and it's just this is the crooked way that he does things. It's the way he manages the country. You know, he's got a goal in mind that he wants to tear it apart, and he's going to do it with or without the help of the rest of the branches of government. Okay? And the thing is we have rules against that sort of thing, against these executive orders. They can be challenged. But because he's spitting them out really fast and everything, you know, they can't keep up with it. And he's got opposition against anyone trying to stop those executive orders, okay? I mean, so he's tying up the system, and that's how he plays the game. That's how he avoided having to go to prison, is by stonewalling, delay, run out the clock until his position is better, and then, you know, everything gets, you know, changed. The whole game is changed. That's the way he works, and that's how he's doing this right now. He's trying to run out the clock. He's trying to delay, and pepper the courts with so much shit that they'll never be able to sift through it. Okay, in the meantime, everybody else is going to go through the motions of carrying out his executive orders because no one's telling them you can't do this, you can't, you know, stop what you're doing. And and people just feel like, you know, hey, until Trump tells me to stop, I ain't going to stop shit, okay? So they're just doing their job as they're told to, but they don't care what the courts say because they don't listen to the courts, they listen to Trump. That's the problem, you see? And the courts, well, you know, how can they enforce what they, you know, it makes you wonder. I mean, you know, if Trump continues to do this, you know, how are people going to react on the streets whenever some of them get in trouble with the courts and they try to avoid listening to what the courts say? Like, you know, like people get a divorce and have a custody battle or something. You know, they see, oh, well, Trump won't listen to the court, so why should I care? You know, I'm not going to let my X see my kids. I don't care what I'm not going to give child support. I'm going to do, you know, it trickles down in that way. I mean, people are going to see Trump as the example that I'm going to follow, especially when it comes to MAGA. They already kiss his ass. So, hey, if Trump's going to do it, so will they. So you're going to have this virus that's going on in Washington, D.C. spread around the country here. But that's all. That's what he is, and that's all we're going to get out of this administration is more fighting with the system. Trump trying to stamp on the goddamn Constitution as hard and as often as possible because he hates it. The business world doesn't like it, never did. He's one of those people, and the only people that are going to benefit from his time in office are the wealthy. Everybody else will suffer. All right, so if you're one of those MAGA people out there who are waiting for better times to come, well, I don't know what to tell you because I don't think you'd believe it anyway. But if you're holding your breath, you're going to die. Okay, you're going to die because it's never going to happen. You're not going to see better times. Okay, you're not one of the wealthy out there that's going to bankroll on what Trump's doing right now. Okay. And if you voted for the guy, you created this problem for yourself. All right. If you want to find somebody to kick around for the way things are, all right, just look in the mirror. Don't go take it out on a Democrat who voted for Hillary. I mean, not Hillary, but you know, Kamala Harris. Okay, don't go take it out on one of them. Okay, they were smart enough to know trash when they saw it. Okay, and they certainly weren't going to vote and support it. But it's your fault that you couldn't see it for what it was, and you went ahead and did what you did. So now that you're suffering, it is just, okay, that you suffer. Unfortunately, it is not just for the rest of us who saw the truth, and now we're going to have to suffer with you, which means we're not going to want to talk to you for quite a while. All right? We don't want to hear, you know, you defending the guy. We don't want to hear why you thought he was a better candidate than Kamala. We're not going to want to hear any of your fucking, you know, harebrained schemes or explanations as to what the hell you think Trump is doing and how it's going to be. We're not going to believe it. We're not going to listen to it because we know this guy. We knew him before you did. Okay? We already knew this guy before you did. So you can't tell us, you know, that the sky is red when it's blue. Okay? You can't. Don't bother. Just don't waste your fucking breath. What you need to do is do a little bit of self-inspection. Find out what the hell. Why did I vote for this guy when he's taken away my fucking retirement, you know, or he's taken away my fucking Social Security, or he's going to take away my health care, or whatever the hell he's after right now. Okay? You need to ask yourself, why is he doing this? I didn't ask him to do that. Even though he said he would do that. Okay? For some reason, a lot of you people just checked out when he said that. You didn't even hear that. But the fact is, he did say that, and there's no reason why you should have actually thought that he was just joking. Why would somebody make a joke like that and think that was funny? Was anybody laughing? I didn't hear anybody laughing in the audience when he said he was going to deport illegals out of this country. All I heard was applause, cheering. Everybody, you know, in the back that was sitting there, you know, and behind the camera there, everybody cheering and applauding. All right? So they knew what they were getting. But it's too late to come out and say, he never said that. He didn't say he was going to do that. I didn't know he was going to do that. Well, some of you did. You were at his rallies, right? If you went to a rally, you knew what he was going to do. And he said pretty much the same thing in every fucking rally if you didn't catch on, okay? He had a script that he was following everywhere he went. That's why he didn't really need a teleprompter. Because, you know, his speech was the same pretty much wherever he went. The only things that were different were the little stories he would tell that were bullshit, you know, and this stuff about Hannibal Lecter and all this other crap that he did to, you know, okay, that was the only variations, but basically his message was consistent at every fucking rally. And some of you followed him from rally to rally to rally. So you had it pounded into your head, but now you want to go around and say you didn't know. You're either lying to me or you weren't paying attention. You must have been asleep while you were there. Okay? So don't tell me you didn't know. You voted for this guy against the better judgment of America. You went ahead and did it anyway. So we've got a lot of fucking stories in history where people have done the same thing. So you're in good company, I guess. You're not unique. Okay, you're just one of many people in the world who were hoodwinked, you know, suckered, you know, led astray. You know, you're no different than those people who drank the Kool-Aid, you know. So you guys are, you know, you're not unique, but you've always been a problem for society, because when it comes to understanding what's right or wrong, it's too hard for you to decide which way to go. So you go where somebody else tells you to go. You're a follower. You're not a leader. You know what I'm saying? So you guys don't know what to do. I can't help you with that, especially if you're older than I am and you're doing that sort of thing. I can't help you with that. That comes from, you know, maturity, experiences, you know, learning. And keeping an open mind, for Christ's sake. That's number one above all, is to keep a fucking open mind and never just assume you know everything about something. And, you know, okay, that's where wisdom begins. Okay, but for some of you people, you think you're wise, but you're not. You think you know what's right or wrong, but you don't. So, but with what happened here, with this thing here with Mel Gibson and Trump, okay, it wouldn't surprise anybody that knows Trump that they would probably say, yeah, he'd probably done this before, you know, and he just, you know, this is totally within his character. All right, so yeah. But, you know, what makes it bad is that so many people out there, you know, they see this story about what he's trying to do here. And even after this lady comes out and makes it public to what happened to her, when, you know, you don't see much talk about it on the news, especially, hey, even when Mel Gibson's name is dropped into this thing, you know, a Hollywood actor, director, okay, even then it still isn't talked about, because that tells you right there that the media is sort of on the side of Trump. You know, this would be a big story at any other time, you know, actor and president colluding to avoid a law. I mean, come on, think about that. It's a tabloid's wet dream to have a story like that. I mean, Christ, you know. But no, instead you don't get much reported about that, and I think, I don't know how else we can look at that except to say that the press is behind Trump in some way or another. Even though Trump abuses them every chance he gets, they happily keep coming forward to report what he says and give him all the camera time he wants. You know, and that's pretty bad. Let me go on to another issue here. I'm going to read this article here from the Maine Monitor, and that's a news thing here for the state of Maine. This was published today. Maine has joined lawsuits challenging Trump's birthright citizenship order, funding freezes, and more. Here's a running list. Since taking office, Trump has signed dozens of executive orders that attempt to curtail federal funding streams and reshape everything from education policy to birthright citizenship. The legal responses have been swift as Maine and other states turn to the courts to fight those changes. On April the 7th, Maine filed its first solo suit against the administration, pushing back after the U.S. Department of Agriculture abruptly froze funds the state uses to feed school children and disabled adults. The freeze, which the Attorney General's office argues is illegal, comes as the Trump administration attempts to force Maine to change its policies around trans student athletes, which it claims violates Title IX. Quote, The president and his cabinet secretaries do not make the law, and they are not above the law, and this action is necessary to remind the president that Maine will not be bullied into violation of the law, unquote, Attorney General Aaron Frey said in a statement. And there's a list here of lawsuits Maine has joined, okay, the birthright citizenship, which they said that violates the 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868. New Jersey is part of that, going after him in that way. Let's see. Maine is joining New York on the DOJ accessing sensitive data. There's a coalition of 19 state attorneys general in suing the Trump administration over what DOJ did to the Treasury Department's central payment system, which included bank account information and social security numbers in violation of the established laws. Then there's this other lawsuit that Maine has joined, a coalition of 21 states against the dismantling of the Education Department. Is suing Education Secretary Linda McMahon, and she's the wife of the guy that runs the wrestling outfit there. What's his name? Vince McMahon. Okay. Suing over plans to reduce the Education Department by half, which they contend would prevent the department from fulfilling many of its functions. Okay, remember what I said about Trump closing things down by defunding them? That's what that is. Again, another Maine versus the Department of Agriculture, blocking school food program funds. Maine sued the USDA over the Trump administration's abrupt freezing of federal funds that are used to feed children in schools and child care centers, as well as adults with disabilities in facilities. USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins said the department was withholding the funds because the state is violating Title IX by allowing transgender girls to compete on girls' sports teams, the latest in a series of federal. You know how many? What was it? 3? 3 transgender girls are in, and all this fuss over that. Okay, bullshit. Okay, another lawsuit. Maine joined New York. New York has launched a lot of these things, and Maine is jumping along with them, okay, to support, okay. New York versus Department of Education, clawing back pandemic relief funds for schools, okay, they're fighting that. Maine joined 15 other states and the District of Columbia in suing the Trump administration over an abrupt cut to more than $1 billion in unspent pandemic relief aid to schools, which the Biden administration had granted schools extensions to spend. Education Secretary Linda McMahon said states had been given, quote, ample time, unquote, to use the funds, but that officials would consider extensions on a case-by-case basis. Hey, the money's theirs. It was already given to them. Why put a time limit on it, okay? If somebody loaned you money and they said you got till tomorrow at this time to spend it, wouldn't you feel that was a little bit rude? Okay? No. That money, they're probably holding it for when they need it. Okay? Jesus. What's the fucking problem? I mean, Social Security is money that government holds until you need it. See, they got, you know what I'm saying. Okay, another lawsuit. California versus Trump. Maine joined that, and 18 other states are suing the Trump administration over a March 25th executive order that would require prospective voters to show proof of U.S. citizenship to register to vote. Okay, we kind of went over that already. So they're suing them over that because it's a violation of the Constitution. New York versus Trump. Maine and 22 other states are suing President Trump and the Office of Management and Budget over a directive to freeze funding for essential federal agency grants, loans, and other programs. I believe it was unlawful for the Trump administration to freeze certain congressionally approved funds that flow to Maine. said Attorney General Frey. This order ensures that those dollars will continue to come to Maine in the interim while my colleagues and I fight in court to insist that the rule of law is followed. That lawsuit was filed on January the 28th. And a federal judge temporarily blocked the freeze, and that block was extended. On March the 26th, a federal appeals court rejected the Trump administration's attempt to overturn that block. Okay. Another one. Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus National Institutes of Health. Maine joined a coalition of 22 other states' attorneys general in suing the National Institutes of Health over plans to cut $4 billion in funding, including a new 14% cap on overhead for federal research grants, alleging that it violates the Administrative Procedures Act. Attorney General Aaron Frey said in a statement that the cuts threatens critical public health research in Maine and around the nation. This lawsuit was filed on February the 10th. On March 5th, a federal judge issued a preliminary injunction preventing the Trump administration from making funding cuts as the case proceeds. Another lawsuit. California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank versus Citibank. Maine Trust joined California, Illinois, and Minnesota state green banks in suing Citibank and the EPA over the Trump administration's effort to block the disbursement of congressionally authorized funds intended to support public and quasi-public agencies that finance clean energy projects. You see, you can't get rid of it, so let's defund it. Okay? Without the ability to access these grants and loan funds, Efficiency Maine cannot support the full scope of programs that it otherwise could, nor can it supply financing to as many energy improvement projects for Maine residents and small businesses as it otherwise would, which we had voted for. Okay? This was on a referendum that was passed not that long ago, okay, that Maine wanted this, and now it's being kicked out from under our fucking feet here because of Trump. This lawsuit was filed on March the 19th. Colorado versus U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. Maine, along with 22 other states and the District of Columbia, is suing the Trump administration over its decision to cancel at least $11 billion, with a B, $11 billion in federal grants. In a statement, Maine Attorney General Aaron Frey said the cuts, quote, threaten the urgent public health needs of states around the country at a time when emerging diseases threats such as measles and bird flu are on the rise, unquote. The administration claimed the funding was no longer necessary because the government's pandemic emergency declaration officially expired. But this isn't just about COVID. You just heard him say it's also for measles and bird flu, okay? So they're going to create another pandemic because, all right, you know, this is the ridiculousness of how that administration thinks. That lawsuit was filed on the 1st of this month. And on April 3rd, a federal judge temporarily blocked the funding cuts. Rhode Island versus Trump. Maine joined 20 other states suing the Trump administration over its March 14th executive order to dismantle federal agencies that support public libraries and museums, promote minority-owned businesses, and resolve labor disputes. Part of the administration's ongoing effort to cut excess bureaucracy, the Institute for Museum and Library Services, one of the impacted agencies, provides grants to Maine libraries. Its elimination could affect their ability to offer free internet, among other things. This was filed on April the 4th. Okay, that's all of them for now. All right. But you see, I mean, do you hear about any of this stuff on the news? The press isn't making any point to bring up all these lawsuits that are being filed not by just the state of Maine, but in overall 22, in most cases, other states, along with the District of Columbia. Okay, I would think that's newsworthy, but you're not going to hear the press today talk much about that, okay? They're only focused on the stock market, you know, and what Trump says about it. In the meantime, the Trump administration is being sued in 15 different fucking directions here, okay, from states that are trying to, you know, keep what's theirs, what was promised to them, okay, from the previous president. And the way Trump is doing it, which is totally illegal, by the way, gives them the grounds to sue him. Okay, these people wouldn't be able to do that if they didn't have any legal grounds to do it, but they do in every single case. What he's doing is wrong. It's against the Constitution. So yes, they have every legal right to go after Trump on this. Okay, whether or not the judges want to agree to that, it's up to them. Okay, but these cases could not be filed, all right, and go go to court if there was no legal grounds. I mean, who's going to waste money trying to do that if they didn't think they had any chance at all of winning the case? But the thing is, like I said, is that you know, you have all these things going on, or outside of, you know, around Trump, rather, I should say, around Trump. Okay, wherever he goes, he brings chaos. So there's chaos ensuing around Trump right now, and the press is not really focusing on any of that. Okay, it's like a wildfire, and the only part of that wildfire the press is gonna cover is maybe this one home here that could get burned down from the wildfire. How these people are gonna act when they lose their home and all. Okay, ignoring the scope of the fucking thing, they distill it down to this little one thing. Okay, and that's really what's going on here, is that they just want to talk about Musk, okay, and or Trump and the stock market. In the meantime, you got all these things going on in the courts, these court battles, which are all over the place, okay, happening, and the protests, which are all over the place, okay, all these things are happening, plus the fact that the rest of the world is also, you know, pissed off at Trump, and there's protests happening in those other countries, okay? The press is not really talking about it. At least the American press isn't. You know, sometimes you got to watch the news that comes out of other countries because they are not inclined to want to give America a break. Okay, they don't sugarcoat nothing. You know, maybe they do in their own countries, but when they're covering their stories in their own countries, but when it comes to the United States, it's like, hey, you guys could talk about whatever the hell you want, bring out everything. You know, we don't care. Okay, so right now it would be better off for people to get their news from the BBC or some other outside agency, okay? Because they will give you warts and all about the United States. And that's really the only truth you're ever going to get. So forget about trying to watch your local news or your national news here. Certainly forget about Fox News, because we know they got an agenda. All right, so you know what I'm saying is that if you want to ever know about what's going on, you need to find out from outside, okay? At least until Trump decides to shut that down, okay? You know, he doesn't like negative, and certainly Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't either, okay? But until they close that access down so we can't ever know what goes on in the news agencies outside of the United States, okay, we're only going to be able to get our truth from them, okay? And that's you know, basically, you know, kind of why I read this list here, is because, look, how many of you people knew about all these fucking lawsuits here that not just Maine, but many states, okay, are taking up with this administration, okay? The fights that are going on, you know? And if you see these articles in your newspapers or something like that, you should pay attention to them, because it's rare that you're ever going to see something mentioned about it, you know? All right, so that's it for today. I hope everybody has a great work week. So subscribe, comment, share. Keep your ears open for health issues, because they will be plenty. And, you know, in your neighborhoods, be kind, you know, be supportive, and be there. Just be there for people when they need you, all right? So I'll talk to you later. Take care, buddy.